Welcome, everybody, to another exciting webinar talking about goals with Planner Premium. And what's helpful about understanding this is that a lot of us are engaged in project management, program portfolio management, and Microsoft is continuing to evolve their technology. The part that we want to make sure we understand is how do we either connect either starting with goals or perhaps even getting into a place where you're doing strategic planning and linking that with teams. So whether you're doing deep level strategic planning or you happen to be working your way through just getting your team galvanized around what needs to happen in the near term or the short term, it's helpful to be able to leverage some of these new emerging features and capabilities. What we will do is begin to showcase the capabilities of Planner Premium working with goals, one of the new features of the Planner Premium product. All right, as we get going here, again, the fun part about this is we get to look at technology at Advisicon. We actually get to wrestle and play with it. Sometimes we bump our heads on it, but more importantly is how do we use this to do business transformation? How do we improve productivity? And I'm Tim Runcie. I'll be your key facilitator today, and I'll walk you through this. I founded this company a long time ago, and I've had the good pleasure and fortune to work both as a consultant, as an architect, and also to help Microsoft continue to improve their product. So today we want to make sure you have a chance to take a look at what and how goals will work for you. So first off, we're going to be thinking through how and where goals might fit you and your organization. Perhaps you're a small organization, maybe you've got a small nonprofit or a small business, or maybe you're a program or a project manager and you're galvanizing your team around what's getting done, all the way up to potentially strategic planning. And we're going to look at some of the touch points with Planner and Planner Premium and how these things connect and work together. Of course, licensing is where Microsoft makes their bread and butter. So we do need to understand, what do you get with Planner? What do you get with Planner Premium? What comes with what? And I think that's helpful to understand, because if you're beginning to leverage goals, doing strategic planning, maybe you're doing opportunities and key result statements, or at least you're galvanizing your organization around this, you want to make sure you have the right tool sets for the job. And of course, most of our time will be spent jumping right into the tool set and walking you through that. Let's jump right into that. And we'll talk about, just certainly for you, leveraging goals within your organization. So first of all, one of the important parts that we wrestle through in terms of thinking about doing projects in what we call portfolio management is, what are the right set of initiatives that we need to accomplish? Now, you might be a project manager, or maybe even you're just managing a small team, but aligning your project, aligning what you're doing is very much a microcosm of what we do in a macrocosm in running an organization. So in many cases, we've done deep strategic planning with large organizations, all the way down to small organizations that are kind of thinking through this, but really aligning kind of like your requirements is, what is our purpose? Why are we trying to accomplish? And so by providing goals, you're going to have a clear direction of what needs to happen. In many cases, you can kind of wrestle through what is the priority of these goals. So in many cases, sometimes different business drivers are more important than others. And you'll find where there's an area that you can work through in terms of making sure that people are prioritizing both effort, time, and the schedule around hitting the most important things. Of course, when you start setting up goals, it begins to build the establishment of a measurable system of targets, numbers, dates, anything that we think is important that our teams can work through. And remember, in project or project management or task or work management, is you might have tons of details in the minutia, but what we want to do is align the right elements to align with what comes first or what we want to get done. In fact, in many cases, we also say, look, if there's things we're not going to do, what we want to make sure is that we actually prioritize what gets done first. So measurable targets are helpful, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we see these put into place. But also, when you're thinking about what's called risk management, is you can begin to identify issues, risks, problems, things that you need to be thinking through around the most important task or elements within your project. In fact, as we talk about Planner, we're building cards, we're building tasks, we're organizing a structure of data. And so what we want to be able to do is identify what are the risks that we want to watch for. And if you have to prioritize the risks that you either are going to have contingency plans for, for, or maybe you're doing risk mitigation, is that you can do that with things that are aligned more strongly to the goals of what your organization is trying to accomplish or what your project is trying to get done. Perhaps maybe it's just a small initiative that needs to get done here, but you want to identify that, look, if we want to do low-hanging fruit and we want to do 20% of the effort that gives us 80% of the value, start with things that are aligned with the goals. Other elements become nice to have. Other activities are, oh, that's great if we can have that, but it is not necessarily the most important task that needs to get done. The other part of this, and this comes back in from what we call resource capacity planning or demand management, where we begin wrestling through, well, here's all the work we have to do, there's a finite number of resources, is that both you can let your team begin to prioritize what they're working on. The idea, of course, empowering your organization or empowering your project teams to focus and prioritize on what they're doing, in many cases does not need a micromanager. Don't think project manager is micromanager, even though for some of us who've had to wear that hat before, we've had to work through that. So really helping your teams establish what is the work priority? Where do we want to get the effort? Maybe we're spinning our wheels and we can set something aside and focus on that. Again, resources and resource effort, equipment, also can be prioritized to make sure that you're aligning what are the most important tasks or work activities that meet your goals. And of course, when we talk about accountability, that is really important. In fact, a lot of you have heard about RACI matrices, where you have the importance of what are we doing in terms of actions, initiatives. We talk about consulted or informed individuals. But the important part of that is that when we begin to set goals, we create ownership. People own the goal, or a team member can own the goal, or might be in charge of a certain specific series of goals and tasks that go along with that, not just your name on every single activity. So again, that first line of defense, really creating the ability for your organization, your team to have accountability and also begin to execute with excellence the areas that deliver the most amount of value. So thinking through this, what we want to do is think, of course, hey, we've got this great tool set called Planner. They talked about goals. We hear about Viva Goals. Project Online, Project Server has something called the Portfolio Analyzer. There's these different tool sets that provide different parts of the portfolio or strategic planning components, but goals are elements that we want to track and work with. So first off, let me kind of cut right to the chase. A lot of people are always asking questions, what does that mean? So if you're thinking about using Viva Goals itself is its own product, and it actually has a very evolved schema that allows you to get into complex scenarios of looking at what we call opportunities and key results or key initiatives, and we're looking at things to accomplish. And you can tie that information back to tasks and project schedules in Project Online. You could tie them to your Planner Premium project tasks. It's actually kind of fun when you think about all the ways that you could connect the dots with that. But again, it is a separate license itself. It's not part of the Microsoft Project SKU, even though Planner itself, which would be a Project Plan 1, Plan 3, or Plan 5, has that ability. If you decide to go to Viva Goals, it can connect. So remember, Microsoft's intent is not to try and make every tool do everything, but to have that better together story. So maybe you're not ready for a separate license called Viva Goals, or maybe you aren't ready to tackle that. In fact, if you want to check out, we've got plenty of other webinars on that where you can go in and learn a little bit more about how the strategic planning comes together and how those pieces work. And it's certainly enlightening if you're in a leadership position. But getting back down to basics is that, hey, wait a minute, I want to just use Planner. So does Planner, the free version, Planner Basic or Planner Standard is what they call it, does it have goals? And the answer is nope, it does not have any goals. The intent was to really help people begin to organize, collate their tasks, create cards, very similar to an agile management tool, which is really exciting. But if you are wanting to begin to go deeper down that path, what you're going to need to do is move up to what we call Planner Premium. And that is a Project Plan 1 license or a Project Plan 3 or Plan 5. In fact, the higher number you go, you get everything underneath it. So again, that's when you really are, as I say, cooking with gas. You really are fully loaded and ready to go. So with the licensing piece out of the equation, let's take a look at an actual demo. Let's talk through more about what actually exists. So first off, let me bring up my screen here so you guys can see this. And What I love about kind of the landing page in Project is that when you come here, you can actually go multiple directions. In fact, you could start creating roadmaps. You have the ability, if you scroll down to the bottom here, to go to Project Online if you have advanced resource management or advanced schedules. That still is available, but we have this one-stop shop where information will appear, including if you're starting to work in teams, you'll be able to see that you actually have this planner tab, and you could live completely looking at all of your planner plans through Microsoft Teams. We'll talk about that a little bit later, and I'll certainly have covered that in other videos. But what's important here is that if you want to jump in and take a look at some of the projects, the things that we have, you can actually look at it. So I'm going to drill into a Planner Premium project. And people say, well, Tim, it looks like Planner. Well, it is Planner, but if you want to look at the top here, certainly we have a grid view. We have that Kanban board where we can kind of move things around. But the minute you see the timeline means that you've moved up into a different level of licensing. And what's helpful about that, in fact, if you look here, is I can create project schedules that say, not only do the cards or the work activity that I'm working on have percent complete, we can track them, but I can have milestones, but we have dependencies so that if something slips, we see the impact of the overall schedule. And again, this is where we begin to say, not only do I have a timeline, but if you look on the top here, we actually also have goals. For those of you that are working certainly in, say, Microsoft Teams, let's take a quick look at this real quickly, and I'll bring that over for you. So if we think about Teams, when we go over here on the left-hand side and click on Planner, the same opportunity comes in. We have all the tasks that might have been flagged or coming through the door, things that might be flagged as an email. Remember, the marriage of Planner, To Do, and Project for the web all get consolidated into what we call Planner Premium. And so if I do decide to jump into my plans here, and I want to take a look at any one of these plans, we still now are in a Teams environment, but we have this grid at the top here, at least these options that we can work with, and you'll see charts, people, and here it is again, goals. So we're going to play around with this a little bit, but I'm going to take it out of the Teams window. We're going to leave it right here, so I've got a little bit more space to showcase how that works. And so as we start out with a list of tasks, some organizations jump in and say, well, before we start building a project schedule or a project itself is, what are we trying to accomplish? And this is where we begin aligning to core requirements or making sure that we're in a good position to manage that. So you can come up here and click on goals. You've noticed I've added a couple goals here at the top, and I've begun to add these new tasks. In fact, let me zoom this real quickly, is that you're going to see a lot of the views that you can continue to manage and edit in are right there in front of you as you switch from the grid view to the board view, and certainly if I'm right in the goal view, adding these in place. So let's add a goal real quickly, and we'll type it in here. So why don't we just say what we are trying to do is improve. We'll call it, we'll improve throughput in project approvals. Maybe you have a change control board and you have a lot of activities, but part of what we need to do is maybe map out our processes, eliminate redundancies, maybe even set up some simple workflows. But again, the idea is I can start adding new tasks right in here at this goal. I can also, while I'm in here, add a date. In fact, it's important to set your targets. So maybe I need to have this kind of wrapped up by the end of September. And I can also come in and set the status, whether it's behind, at risk, or closed. Again, this is a manual setting where I can come in and actually define, is this at ahead or behind? And I can manage this. In terms of looking at things like Viva Goals, which we'll see here in a moment, this information of your task, your cards, is going to actually start automatically rolling and updating. But here, I'm able to sort, filter, and group all the views in Planner based upon putting in these goals. So again, I can also go in here and say, well, let's not just type in new tasks. Let's go ahead and connect to some of the tasks that we have here. And while I'm in here, maybe I'm looking for everything that's important. For example, maybe I want to say anything that has to do with planning, I want to find that. And so if I start type in plan, I can say, you know what? I've got a couple of these I need to add, and I need to tie these to my goals. I usually skip over summary tasks because in many cases, if I'm clicking on a summary task, I'm really talking about all the activities that bubble up or roll up inside of there. And again, if you backspace over this, it'll open back up and you can actually put in pieces that help. So I hit save. You'll notice that they'll drop in here. I can certainly progress these, marking them done, not done, or if I want to come in and edit, I'm still working directly in the details of this particular task or card in Planner, but I'm doing it from a goals view. If I switch over to my board or my grid view, in fact, in many cases, when we go into that grid view, you can see a lot of columns that come natively. And if I scroll to the very end here, if I want to add a column, like for example, maybe you don't have your goals turned on, you would simply click on Add Column, and you could go through and either add it and select it or manage that. In fact, if I take this and I hide my column, I can come back in and also put that back in. Here's my goal. And I just added that in, and I can very easily drag or move that to a different place. So for example, if I wanted to see this in my grid view, I want to look at, hey, how are we doing in terms of dates and goals? I'll drag it so that the link, little green line, or depending on what your background color is, will separate your columns, and you can leave these directly. And now I'm actually able to see these and manage these as I work directly. In fact, if I come in to say, hey, I'm doing rolling wave planning, and I open up my information here, I can see the start, finish, duration, just like we do normally. But more appropriately, as I'm adding and managing this, I can quickly see what are the fields that are helpful in terms of my overall view. And again, your goal can be part of your grouping and filtering of the information that you have to work with. So let me just close the details just for a moment, and let's continue. So in this case, if I go ahead and into my filters, I can come down here and say, yeah, you know what? I want to filter by optimize work productivity. What goals are aligned to this? Or if I click it off and I click on Streamline Reports, I can immediately filter my entire schedule, my plan, which can have 1,000 or more rows here as we begin managing this. This is helpful for us to overall see what is aligned to a particular goal. Again, let me clear that filter, and let's look at it from a couple different areas. I'm in the grid view visualizing this. Let's switch over to a board view where I actually spend quite a bit of my time when I'm starting to build schedules and assign dates and fields, is that right now I'm grouped by progress. What if I want to group by goal? And you notice here I've got the ability right at the end to add a goal directly right into the plan. So I can continue to add or modify this, or I can go to all the tasks that have not been assigned and say, hey, Priscilla's key estimations, that's pretty important for our throughput. Let me drag and drop this right over. And instead of having to click, drill down, and add it or select from an individual area, I can go through using my board view to add, amend, or remove something from a goal. So again, I've got the option from a board view. And of course, certainly if we think about a timeline view, the idea is that we still have that option to come down here and continue to filter anything in your overall project schedule, including things that you're starting to build or manage from. So using goals directly are helpful, and it's certainly something for us to think about, but not just goals are assigned to tasks, right? We think about our overall schedule and who's doing the work. We can actually hop into a people view. And while we're in here, certainly apply a filter saying, I'm looking for anything that has to do with build, or I want to look for a bug, or anything that I'm typing again. But what about filtering by your goals inside of the people view? And so what I can do here is I can certainly filter which initiatives and who is actually assigned to be working on these particular items. In fact, you notice as I click on my filters, I can select one or multiple goals to see where those sit. And again, I'll set this to no goals. But again, clearing that filter just gives me the ability in a people view to be looking at the grouping this way. Now, if I want to group by goal itself, look closely here. I'm grouped by goal. I can certainly filter as we talked about, but more appropriately, take a look here. When I look at, say, for example, Brett, I can see what tasks do not have a goal. I can also look down here and say which goals are specifically assigned to each individual. So I can say, hey, this is the ones that's working on optimized work productivity. And I can look at each person and, of course, see the goals. In fact, expanding, collapsing the details of the work or the assignments that we have. So again, the great part of this is it's very agile, very nimble. It helps you begin to organize your teams, and especially if you're in a low maturity organization that is not looking to have an overly complex strategic plan, you can quickly galvanize your team or get them aligned with what the targets and goals are, versus just adding them as we used to in buckets where people would drag things and say, that happens to be a certain bucket category. I now have this goal field that I can work with, including when I want to begin to look at charting or graphing. So some things that we're going to see in the later episodes, we're going to talk about the Power BI report packs and how we can actually see all this data available and visible for us to work from. So in this case, again, I can hop into my chart. I can look at the overall effort by person. I'm looking at time, what's done, what's not done, what's in progress, and I have my filters. Same thing applies here. I can come in and say, hey, show us everything against a specific goal, or maybe several goals I want to see in that list. So again, quick, simple, easy to use. And the idea is that it comes with your plan 1 and moving into plan 3 and plan 5 is that you've got goals available for your team to work from. And so as we go back and forth between the tactical and the detailed view, we can very easily make sure that new initiatives or new tasks or new work activities align to the overall goals that we work from. So with that being said, this is Planner Premium, and the goals, if you are thinking about maybe moving up a little bit higher and you're still using Planner, but you want to actually take into a little bit deeper level in strategic planning, we'll take a couple minutes. I'm going to show you Viva Goals. A lot of people have seen this before in some of our other webinars, or maybe they've dabbled with it a little bit. But the overall idea is that you can create goals for you. You can create goals for an organization. And what you can do is you can begin aligning these overall objectives that you're trying to accomplish. And then you can break those down by the key elements that you would deliver. In fact, if I click here and I say, hey, let's go ahead and add a child item, I might want to say, well, with this goal, I want to add key results. These are kind of the key result statements that we're trying to achieve. I might even add specific projects that I want to kind of see how they're working on. And again, you can have goals within goals or objectives within objectives, but the idea is that you begin to align what is the structure of the hierarchy of what will it take to deliver against your opportunities and your key objectives and results. You kind of line these pieces together. Now, looking at Viva Goals here, which is what I happen to be in right now, as I look through here, I've got some things that are measuring on track, some things are ahead or behind. You can also change your owners. We can actually assign them to a group or a team. But more appropriately, you'll notice a few things here. If you look on the right, some of these actually have symbols of where it's getting its data from. In fact, we talk about pulling it from project, or we can even pull things from planner. Now, this is not the only limitation that Viva Goals has to where it gets its data. In fact, that's kind of the fun part about this, is that instead of just manually coming in and saying, hey, we're ahead, we're on track, or behind, what you can do is tie your goals or your opportunities, or if you're thinking about tying any of these key result statements to a project, we can come in here, and let me just show you how to do that. If you click on Edit, what it's going to do is going to say, well, listen, how are you getting your progress? And progress can certainly be done manually, but if you look closely right here, as you set up Viva Goals, you can actually define where that data comes from. You have a very broad and a very wide open area you can search from. In fact, let me click on this to show you just some of the things that we turned on here at Advisicon. Azure DevOps, Dynamics, Excel. Of course, this is Excel online, right? Remember, you want to make sure it's published into the Dataverse. Google Sheets, Planner, Power BI, right? So we can actually pull that project from the web, which is really our Planner Premium. And of course, Trello. So there's things that are both Microsoft and non-Microsoft that it says it can go and look at what those are. So in this case, if I'm thinking about taking a look at finding this, let me just click on Planner real quickly. And if I decide to go in and connect to a plan, it's actually pretty simple. You're going to say, what plan is that? You can scroll through the list and you can grab one of these that might make the most sense, or you might have quite a few to draw from. But the overall idea is that you can actually come in and find, click, and manage these. And when you come in, remember that if you've sat down and you've created your buckets, meaning how you've organized that, you can actually go through and say, I'm looking for everything that's in the planning or the initiation phase, or maybe it's sprint 1 or sprint 2, or whatever that might be. These buckets allow you to go and say, while I'm looking at that project schedule or that planner board, let's zero in on a specific portion. And whether it's a bucket, or you can also go through and say, maybe if you create your labels, you can actually look at different type of labels that have objects. And while you're in there, you could also go through and select individual cards or tasks, meaning that I can actually say, look, I want a whole bunch of tasks or activities within a bucket. Maybe I'm looking for things within a specific label that I flagged as high priority, or maybe you've made those labels in Planner and said, these are part of the strategic plan. And so you can go through here. And what I really like about this, you can even pick who, right? I can look at if it's me or someone else. I have that option. But when you're setting this up, let me zoom this real quickly. This is a bit of a difference. You'll notice that it says, I can look at all the tasks that are completed, meaning that look at all the tasks completed by me or in this label or in this bucket or all three, and I can give you a ratio or percentage when I talk about a percent complete. Or if you are looking at a specific set of checklist. Remember, in Planner, when we come back out and we build these cards and we put them together, what we can do is if we open any one of these up and we take a look at the information inside, remember you can create checklist. So not only can it look at a bucket and all of the little checklists to make sure things are done, but it will count them up and tell you what percentage they are. So again, thinking about the details and how we draw that back to our strategic plan, if I come back in here, I can see some of these items, I can see those key deliverables, but when I go back to my OKRs and I want to begin pulling those pieces together, let's just grab one that we've actually connected to already. If I come in here and I want to take a look at the details and I click on Edit Integration, meaning I can say, let's actually validate that information. Let's just see what I'm connected to. The intent is that I can come in and say, in this case, I've got my project. I'm looking at everything that's in sprint 1, right? I'm looking at the correct buckets. And while I'm in there, I might want to narrow it down to the number of users or specific users. But in this case, it says the number of tasks completed. Right? The idea is that it's looking for that very specifically for us to work with. And so as we begin checking those tasks or finishing the checklist, this will automatically roll back and update that percent complete. So Viva Goals can connect to lots of data sources. And while you're organizing your initiatives and maybe your teams are managing in different places, the idea is that goals can roll down, they can actually roll up, but it'll tie back into the Viva Goals information. Again, this is where Planner and Planner Premium makes itself available to funnel that information back into a larger picture. So today, this is what we wanted to get to, is kind of showing you both the native goals as well as taking a look at what we can do perhaps with things that are not on the Planner license and how those work together. So in summary, remember, Viva Goals, separate tool, advanced level OKRs, there's a whole, I mean, literally this is where Intel and Google and other large organizations have founded these things, talking about strategic objectives and OKRs, and you hear terminology around that. There's books written around this, but you don't have to start at that level. You can start right where you're at, building your own portfolio of initiatives and goals and targets, and then you can align those tasks together. If you're using a Project Plan 3 license, which means you get Project Desktop, you get Project Online or Project Server if you're on premise still, you can actually also funnel things into what's called the Portfolio Analyzer. Something totally different. And again, I've got a full webinar out there on that tool set. But the goal of the Portfolio Analyzer is to look at what are your priorities, what do you want to do, and do you have enough money or do you have enough resource availability to do those work? So it's solving a little bit of a different equation than looking specifically at the OKRs that you might be finding coming out of Viva Goals. Planner Premium, right? Easy to use, easy to build, simple. In fact, that's the benefit, is that you don't have to be very complex to organize that. And if somebody else has a massively large strategic plan, you can carry those items directly in and you can type them in. You can start with your team, you could do it yourself, but the idea is that you can funnel and organize and track things against your goals. And again, this is that gateway to a grow-up story that says start small, make sure people begin to get the concepts, and then continue to expand and grow from one project to multiple projects. And again, this comes with the license, not the free version of Planner, but with Planner Premium, Plan 1, Plan 3, or Plan 5. So hopefully this was helpful today, and I appreciate your time. If you have other questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime. I'm Tim Runcie, and again, any one of my staff is always available to take calls and help maybe direct you in the right place. We also have additional ongoing training, so if you found this on our YouTube channel, or if you're also looking at potentially getting PDUs from PMI, we have this in our free learning management portal, which you just go in, register, and you can come and watch and take some of these and earn PDUs while you go. So I hope you enjoyed the session. And again, like I said, if you have questions, ping us anytime. This is a lot of fun learning, playing, testing with it, and then helping organizations mature. So good luck with your strategic planning and building goals. Take care now.